I pick up pocket aces, under the gun +2. Under the gun limps in, I raise to 30. Under the gun makes the call, we're heads up, the dealer puts out ace, king, deuce, rainbow, we flop top set, it's almost too good. The opponent checks, I check back. The turn is a 10, under the gun checks, time to start betting, I make it 40. The player shoves for $5 more, I call, he has jack 10, the river is the 4 of hearts, we win that one, we're on a roll, and our image is great. That was the 5th set of the night, but I'm not done. I pick up pocket 5s, under the gun +1. It's my very first hand at this table. I'm not paying attention and think someone raised it to 10. There's actually an under the gun straddle. I call the 10. Middle position player raises to 40. The hijack calls. I call. We go 3 ways to the flop. It's 7-5-3 with 2 diamonds. We've now made 6 sets. We're 3-2 so far. I'd like to make it 4-2. I check. The pre-flop raiser bets 75. The hijack's all in for 105. I'm not sure whether to flat or raise. The pot will reopen from the hijack jamming. I might lean more towards flatting, then the middle position player could raise again. The hijack unfortunately didn't have enough money to reopen it. I don't want to take any chances of having a bad card come on the turn. I announce a raise at 250. It's small, hoping to keep in big overpairs because those types of hands are drawing nearly dead. The action's on the middle position player. He has a huge decision to make. We both have large stacks. If he calls or raises here, we're likely going to get it all in at some point. I wouldn't mind if that happens on the flop. He's worried that I've shown too much strength after 2 players have already shown interest and one's all in. He lays down what he says is pocket kings. That's too bad. Check raise would have worked out better if the hijack hadn't shoved. I turn over my cards, it's heads up, there's no more action. The turn is a 9, the river is an ace. The hijack doesn't seem too thrilled. He eventually shows he has pocket 4s. He had a pair and a gut shot on the flop. I'm up 1200 total and I'm pumped up. In this one, we're dealt pocket 4s on the button. Under the gun opens at 30. We're still 5-handed, so under the gun is the same as the hijack. The cutoff calls. I'm happy to join in as well. I call. We go 3 ways to the flop. I'm not kidding you. I look up and see my set genie walking around. Then the flop comes jack 5-4 with 2 clubs. The genie is struck again. Unfortunately, the pre-flop raiser checks. Cutoff checks as well. There are lots of draws out there. We're not checking back. I bet 50, expecting to take it down pretty often without any resistance. Surprisingly, under the gun throws in a $200 check raise. The cutoff folds. The action's back on me. Strange situation. The opponent could have an overpair, a big draw, set, or maybe he's making a move with something like 8-7 of spades. Part of me wants to flat in order to let the player hang himself. The problem with that is the amount of cards that I won't want to see. I obviously don't want more clubs, and any ace, deuce, 3, 6, 7, or 8 will make straights possible. Overcards could be bad for me or kill action by making the opponent less confident about his hand. It's best to try and get as much money in now as I can. I re-raise to 550. The player's looking at both of our stacks. We started fairly deep. He has about 1,800 total. I have him covered. If he shoves, I'm going to be snap calling. Almost a full minute goes by, then the player folds pocket queens face up, makes a great laydown. I'm a bit surprised he went with a check raise rather than betting flop to begin with, but he gets away from it without getting hurt too badly. Next, we're at the second table of the night where we're dealt pocket queens under the gun +2. Under the gun +1 limps in for 5. I raise to 25. The hijack calls. Under the gun +1 calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes queen 9-6 with 2 spades. I know what you're thinking, that's 3 hands in a row we're going over, we're gonna have top set. We'll get used to it. I wasn't lying in the intro when I said that we make a ton of huge hands throughout the whole session. Under the gun +1 checks, I bet 45. I typically don't slow play as the pre-flop aggressor on wet boards. There are plenty of drawing type hands that my opponents could call or raise with. The hijack folds. Under the gun +1 makes it 120. There aren't too many things that are better than flopping the nuts and getting check raised. This particular player only has 130 behind, but he just got caught bluff raising a few hands earlier. If he's bluffing me here, I want to keep him in. I call. The turn is the 5 of hearts. 8-7 makes it straight. I'm not too concerned about that. Under the gun +1 jams, as I suspected he might with almost any hand that he could possibly have. I slide in chips and call. The opponent is not happy to see that.
Losing that play.
They tried to find out if he
it's like 7 miles.
I got there.
Yep.
You have King 10.
The opponent check raised me on the flop with the gutter. The trap was set perfectly for him. He gets the rest of his money in, drawing dead to 4 outs on the turn. No problem. He drills it. If he played his cards face up, I would have taken the same line. I'm happy with the way that I played it. We just get unlucky. Let's turn it around and win a hand. I pick up pocket kings in the small blind. The cutoff opens at 15. He's in for a world of hurt. I 3-bet to 60. The opponent calls. We're heads up, out of position. The flop comes king 9-8 rainbow. We've got top set. Finally, we're in a good situation. I'm not slow playing this. The player I'm up against seems to be after me a little, based on my experience with him in previous hands and the fact that everyone here is after me. My sense is that he may call or raise me light. I bet 60 again. There's some rope. Do what you like with it. The player calls. That's great. The turn is the 6 of hearts. 10-7 and 7-5 get there. He shouldn't have those holdings though. I bet 130. It's not actually that great of a board for my 3-bet range compared to the opponent's range, given how he played it. I'll mostly have one pair hands like aces or ace-king. My opponent can have sets of 9s and 8s, maybe even something like king-9 suited or 9-8 suited hands sometimes. The cutoff likely knows this and raises to 330. I'm not sure if he actually has a strong hand and this is a cooler, or if he's getting out of line against me. There are too many river cards that I won't want to see, plus I'm out of position. For those reasons, I don't want to call. I raise to 830, the max that I'm allowed to. I have hopes that the cutoff has a set or a 2-pair hand and will jam for the remainder of his stack, which would be about 500 on top. It appears that we caught him trying to pull a fast one on us. The player folds. We're very far into the session before we win our first significant pot. We're still down 2,400. Perhaps this is when things turn around for us though. I take my seat in the must move, then early on I'm dealt pocket 10s in the small blind. Under the gun opens at 30. What's interesting about this player is that he's the same guy who raised pre-flop when I got boat over boated with pocket 10s in the small blind in the previous 10-20 vlog. The hijack and button call to 30. I call for 25 more. The big blind calls. 5 of us are seeing the flop. It's 10-8-7 with 2 diamonds. We've got 3 10s and 4 opponents on a very connected board. This is an eerily similar hand as the one that I just mentioned that didn't go well for me. I even have one of the same opponents. I check. Unfortunately, so does everyone else. The turn is the queen of spades. That's a good card in terms of helping me get value. Maybe someone has top pair. I can't let this check through again. I bet 120. The big blind folds immediately. The pre-flop raiser might have something like king queen or ace queen. He calls. The hijack and button fold. We're heads up. The river is the 5 of spades. I got a great run out for my particular hand. It's time to extract maximum value. How much would top pair be willing to call once some major draws miss like king jack and diamonds? I choose a sizing of 300. Under the gun is thinking about what to do. I said in the last vlog that he's played some of the biggest games in the world, including in Macau. He's perhaps the best player in the casino, but I'm feeling pretty good about the situation that I'm currently in. The opponent just has to see what I've got. He calls, I turn over the set. It's a winner. We get a lot of value in our first important hand of the session. It's a nice way to begin. Not long after, I pick up pocket 7s in the big blind. The same opponent I bluffed in the last hand opens a 75 again from under the gun +1. The button calls, the small blind calls, I call for 50 more. 4 of us see the flop. It comes jack 9-7 with 2 diamonds. We flop bottom set in a multi-way pot. Small blind checks, I check. The initial pre-flop raiser bets 125 just like he did in the previous hand. Folds to me. This is too coordinated of a board to slow play. I need to get as much money in now as I can. I raise to 450. The player calls. I'm hoping for a blank. Dealer puts out the deuce of clubs, one of the best cards in the deck. The opponent has just over 1,000 left in his stack. I put 11 black chips out, I'm hoping for a call. The player tanks, then ultimately folds. We don't get to stack anybody, but we win another decent one. It's always fun to make a big hand in a monster game. I come back to the table, win a somewhat small pot for this game, and I'm feeling slightly rejuvenated when I look at pocket 5s in the big blind. Under the gun +1 opens a 75. I call, we're heads up out of position. Nothing's really gone too well for us so far. That's about to change. The flop comes 10-7-5 with 2 hearts. We've got bottom set. Wile E. Coyote isn't here, so I've got to check to set the trap myself. The opponent has a little roadrunner in him. He checks back to avoid certain doom, at least for now. The turn is the jack of diamonds. 9-8 gets there, but for a variety of reasons, it's tough to imagine that's what we're up against. I bet 150 to punish the under the gun +1 player for trying to control the pot in the previous street. He puts $150 in the middle to purchase his one-way trip to Paintown. The river is another 10. That pairs the board and gives us a boat. Poker rooms tend to be cold. Don't worry though, I keep the heat on by betting 450. The opponent's trying to make sense of the story that I've been telling, which is that I have a very big hand. To his credit, I also have plenty of bluffs, including a hand like 7-5 suited that's been counterfeited. Once he checks back flop, he shouldn't have many 10s in his range. That would allow me to bet large with air a decent percentage of the time. Unfortunately for him, in this instance, I happen to be close to the top of my range. The opponent must have something with showdown value. He calls. I feel bad for under the gun +1 because it's no longer 2020, but the guy still isn't able to avoid bad news. I flip over the boat. That's going to be the winner. This is a really important pot to win in order to build up some confidence. We made a big hand, got value on 2 streets. Now we've got some momentum going, and we're only stuck about 1,500, which is just the amount of one medium-sized pot at these stakes. Here we've got deuces in the small blind. Spraggy, who's an avid Oasis fan, like he really loves them, opens a 20 in the hijack. The button calls, I call, Jeff Boski calls in the big blind. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It's It's 10-8 deuce with 2 hearts. We have bottom set against a couple of my favorite people in poker, Jeff Boski and Little Gordon Ramsay. I check, Jeff checks, Spraggy loves pain, he bets 55. The button calls, there are lots of draws, I'm not going to slow play this. I raised to 200. Jeff doesn't have anything to stick around with, he folds. Spraggy is a non-believer, he 3-bet rips it in for 864 effective, like some kind of mad villain in Doctor Who. The button folds, I call, I'm playing a huge all-in for this game against one of my buddies, and I have no idea what he has.
We're good. I like the bet on Brad.
The turn is the queen of spades, so queens and jack 9 are now beating me. The river is the 4 of diamonds. We show Spraggy our hand, and the dude is not happy.
What an insane loser you are, actually.
Aces no good?
Look at this real.
Kings? Oh, this feels so good.
Truly pathetic individual.
Put all his money in with one pair?
I check raise and he just rips it.
Does he have any combos? What's he got?
Alright.
It's always bittersweet to beat your buddy in a huge all-in situation. Obviously, I'm happy to win the pot, and I know Spraggy's happy for me to have a lot of his money. Plus, it's captured on video that'll be on YouTube forever. But Marley has left Spraggy here without a car by himself, and it got really uncomfortable when Spraggy told me that he might need to borrow money for a bus ride home. I had to tell him no. He's a really good friend, but he needs to learn some lessons the hard way, like not to get it in with one pair for 200 big blinds and multi-way pots. It'll be for his own good. To make things tougher, I got the sense that he didn't like having to watch me write notes about the hand in my phone, mostly because he tweeted about it. I can definitely understand how that would be annoying. If I just played a hand terribly and got stacked, I wouldn't want there to be any documentation of it either. It's just that I'm trying to make the vlog the best that it can be. I have to provide a lot of details, and sometimes when I'm writing all those details in the hand history, it takes a little while. I even put in hand history keys in my notes. It's a tough one for Spraggy. My advice to him is, you gotta roll with it. Do you know what I mean? Some might say, don't look back in anger. And I don't think that he did.
Thanks, man.
Really nice hand.
Pocket queens, under the gun +2. Under the gun +1 opens to 120. He's been playing pretty snug. I just flatted with queens pre-flop before when I faced an early position raise. Here I 3-bet to 400. This is gonna look super strong. The under the gun straddler is named Ping. He's a great player and great guy. He's assessing the situation and appears to want to get involved in some way. If he called 4 bets after the first 2 players to act raise and 3-bet, he's only going to have hands like aces, kings, and ace-king. Maybe he doesn't even 4-bet ace-king or kings. He calls, which I'm happy to see. Under the gun +1 calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop. I haven't made any sets today in the big game. This would be a great time to hit one. I'm going to need your help to do so. On the count of 3, let's hit that like button for extra run good. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The flop is queen 3 deuce with 2 spades. We have top set and we're in position in a multi-way 3-bet pot while playing for huge amounts of money. I just want to trap this moment in a jar and come back to it when I'm feeling down because this is special for me. The opponent's check, I've got the best possible hand, and I even have backdoor spades to go with it. Now how do I extract the most value when opponents will probably have a lot of hands like middling pocket pairs? I bet 480 to keep one or both opponents in. Under the gun calls, he could have a hand like ace-king or ace-jack of spades. He could also have a hand like jacks. Under the gun +1 folds, it's heads up. Maybe I can get a clean run out this time. Nope. The dealer puts out the 7 of spades. Again, I flop the nuts and I get significantly downgraded in a large pot. 3/4 of the queens are accounted for, so a flush draw seemed like the most likely hand that I would have gotten called by on the flop, especially when the opponent called with another player left to act behind him. Under the gun checks. I doubt a hand like jacks or tens can call a second barrel, and I don't want to get check raised again. I check back. The river is the 6 of hearts. Realistically doesn't change anything. Under the gun bet's 500. It's a tiny amount that looks a lot like a blocker bet. I don't get the sense that he's doing this with a flush. He's probably doing this to get to showdown with a hand like ace queen of hearts, maybe jacks or tens. There's a tiny chance that I can get extra value from one of those hands if I raise. It'll probably look bizarre after checking back turn, which could allow me to get called lighter. If I get re-raised, it'll be a disaster though. My instincts are telling me that I have the best hand and I can perhaps make a little extra profit by putting in additional money. I went with my instincts by value betting with the flush in the king-jack hand earlier, and I lost the absolute maximum. That hand swirling in the back of my mind, I have to forget about previous bad outcomes and try to make the best decision I can in the moment. I raised to 1700. The opponent has me beat. He might just ship it in my face. That's been happening to me a lot lately. That doesn't appear to be what's going to occur right now. The player thinks that I might have him beat, but he can't find a fold. He puts his calling chips in front of me as if to say, I know you have the winner. I flip over the set. I imagine it's best. I'm so happy because this win would get my stack up over the 17,000 mark. Ping throws the chips that he initially bet river with over my way too. I'm feeling great. Then I realized that he hasn't returned his cards to the dealer yet. I don't necessarily have the winner.
You're not gonna slow roll me, are you?
Ping is a class act and chose Pocket King solely for the poker vlog. He didn't have to do that, and it isn't a common thing to do in high stakes, particularly after a large pot doesn't go your way. Ping had the king of spades, so the turn gave him a total of 10 outs. Luckily for us, he didn't hit one, and my raise on the river made me an extra $1,200. I'm only down about $2,800. It's been an incredible comeback session, and it isn't even close to over.